Behind the legendary goals and Hall of Fame rosters of hockey's greatest dynasties lies a brutal, unspoken truth that the NHL tried desperately to erase from history. Every single championship victory is actually designed to destroy a franchise. The system is built to tear winners apart, stripping them of draft picks, exhausting their players, and pushing their bodies to the absolute limit of physical survival. To win a Stanley Cup, a team must play over 100 games of high-impact, bone-crushing hockey in a single season. To do it 2, 3, or 4 years in a row is statistically and biologically impossible. Yet, throughout hockey history, a select few empires defied this gravity. They did not just win. They established absolute dominance that lasted for decades. They exploited hidden loopholes, weaponized administrative power, and created psychological advantages that left their opponents defeated before they even stepped onto the ice. But this level of dominance created a massive problem for the league itself. It threatened the very financial survival of hockey, forcing the NHL to wage a quiet, relentless war against its own greatest champions. The first battle of this war began in the freezing rinks of Quebec, where one team built an empire that seemed completely untouchable. To understand how a dynasty is born, we must travel back to mid-20th century Montreal. The Canadiens did not just build a great hockey team, they constructed an absolute monopoly. During the 1950s, Montreal won 5 consecutive Stanley Cups, a record that still stands today. This dominance was not an accident of scouting. It was the result of a system where Montreal controlled the entire province of Quebec. Before the modern amateur draft was created, the Canadiens sponsored and owned entire junior hockey leagues. Every promising young French-Canadian skater grew up in a system where playing for the Canadiens was the only logical destination. By the time other teams even heard of a prospect, Montreal already had him under contract. This gave them an endless supply of elite talent, including legends like Maurice Richard and Jean Beliveau. Opponents were not just playing against a roster, they were playing against an entire province of hockey production. But as the 1960s progressed, the rest of the league decided they had seen enough. The NHL implemented a new system designed specifically to strip Montreal of its geographical advantage and level the playing field. The NHL believed the introduction of the amateur draft in 1963 would finally destroy the Montreal dynasty. Under the new rules, the worst teams got the best young players, ensuring a natural cycle of decline for champions. But they underestimated the brilliant mind of Montreal general manager Sam Pollock. Pollock realized that bad teams are often desperate for immediate help and terrible at predicting their own future. He began trading away depth players and aging stars to struggling franchises in exchange for their draft picks years down the line. His masterpiece came in 1971. Pollock had targeted the California Golden Seals, convincing them to trade their first-round pick. California finished dead last, giving Montreal the number 1 overall selection. The Canadiens, who had just won the Stanley Cup, used that pick to draft superstar Guy Lafleur. Instead of falling to the bottom, Montreal used the draft to rebuild their dynasty while still on top, winning 4 consecutive championships in the late 1970s. The system had failed to stop them, but a new empire was about to rise in New York, and they would do it through pure physical brutality. But physical intimidation was becoming the new currency of the NHL. In the 1970s, the Montreal dynasty faced a terrifying new threat. The Philadelphia Flyers, known as the Broad Street Bullies, and the Big Bad Bruins of Boston, decided that if they could not outplay Montreal, they would beat them into submission. Philadelphia won back-to-back championships using sheer, unadulterated violence, turning the ice rink into a gladiator arena. Yet, instead of folding, Montreal adapted. Coach Scotty Bowman integrated tactical discipline with speed, proving that elegance could survive brutality. The Canadiens defeated the Flyers in the 1976 finals, reclaiming their throne and winning 4 straight cups, proving that even in hockey's darkest, most violent decade, Montreal's system remained unbreakable. By the summer of 1980, the New York Islanders were ready to unleash a different kind of dominance. They did not rely on territorial monopolies or clever draft manipulation. Instead, they built an empire on raw, suffocating physicality and unmatched mental resilience. Led by Dennis Potvin, Mike Bossy, and Brian Trottier, the Islanders won 4 consecutive Stanley Cups between 1980 and 1983. But the true miracle of this dynasty was their record of 19 consecutive playoff series victories. To this day, No team in any major North American sport has ever matched this streak. The physical toll of this achievement was terrifying. Players fought through separated shoulders, broken ribs, and torn ligaments, refusing to leave the ice because they knew any sign of weakness would break the chain. They practically lived on painkillers and pure adrenaline. But by 1984, the human body could simply take no more. Their dynasty did not end because they lost their skill. It ended because they ran out of blood and bone, leaving the door open for a completely different hockey revolution in Western Canada. The 1980s belonged to the Edmonton Oilers, a team that did not just win, they rewrote the physical laws of hockey. Led by Wayne Gretzky, the Oilers realized that speed and skill could bypass brute force entirely. While previous dynasties ground down their opponents in grueling battles along the boards, Edmonton attacked in waves of terrifying speed, turning the ice into a track meet. Gretzky scored 50 goals in just 39 games, a record that defied hockey mathematics. Together with Mark Messier and Jari Kurri, they captured 5 Stanley Cups in 7 years. But this offensive explosion terrified the NHL. The league was built on physical defense, and Edmonton was making their entire defensive structure look foolish. In a desperate bid to slow them down, the NHL even altered its rulebook, eliminating 4-on-4 situations during offsetting minor penalties because Edmonton was too lethal with open ice. This rule change was a direct assault on the Oilers' style, but an even greater threat was looming, one that would destroy this dynasty from within. As the 1980s ended, the geopolitical landscape changed, and with it, the NHL. The fall of the Soviet Union opened the doors to a massive wave of European talent, and Detroit Red Wings general manager Ken Holland, along with coach Scotty Bowman, saw an opportunity to build a new empire. They united 5 Russian superstars, Sergei Fedorov, Igor Larionov, Vyacheslav Kozlov, Vyacheslav Fedisov, and Vladimir Konstantinov, into a single unit known as the Russian Five. This unit played a hypnotic puck retention style that North American hockey had never seen. They dominated space and time, bringing Detroit back-to-back championships in 1997 and 1998. It was a beautiful cerebral revolution, but it was destined to crash into a wall of pure hatred. That hatred came in the form of the Colorado Avalanche. For nearly a decade, Detroit and Colorado engaged in the most violent, high-stakes rivalry in modern sports history. It was triggered in 1996 when Colorado forward Claude Lemieux brutally checked Detroit's Chris Draper into the boards, shattering his face. The resulting blood feud produced legendary brawls, including infamous goalie fights where Patrick Roy and Mike Vernon clashed at center ice. But this was not mindless violence. These were 2 of the most talented teams ever assembled, fighting for absolute supremacy. Between 1996 and 2002, these 2 franchises won 5 Stanley Cups, pushing each other to the absolute limit of physical and mental endurance, and creating the last great rivalry of the pre-cap era. But this golden age of high-stakes hockey was hiding a terminal disease. Without a budget limit, the NHL turned into an economic Wild West. Wealthy franchises like Detroit, Colorado, and the New York Rangers began spending astronomical sums to buy championships, with Detroit's payroll climbing toward $80 million in an era when other franchises could barely afford $20 million. The competitive balance was completely broken, and small market teams were facing financial ruin. The league was heading toward a cliff, and in 2004, the owners decided to shut the entire system down, leading to the cancellation of an entire season. The old world of hockey was about to be wiped off the map. For over half a century, dominance was a matter of money, management, and geography. But in 2005, the NHL dropped a nuclear bomb on the concept of the hockey dynasty, the hard salary cap. After a season-long lockout, the league designed a system where keeping a championship roster together was financially impossible. Under these new laws of economic gravity, as soon as a team wins, their players demand raises, and the champion is forced to trade away key pieces just to survive. The modern era has seen incredible runs from Chicago, Pittsburgh, and Tampa Bay, but none could match the consecutive 4-year or 5-year championship streaks of the past. The salary cap did what defenders, rule changes, and physical exhaustion never could. It mandated parity by law. the classical hockey dynasty is officially dead, buried under mountains of financial paperwork. But this is exactly why those legendary runs of the Canadiens, Islanders, and Oilers remain so legendary. They did not just beat their rivals, they conquered a version of the game that will never exist again.